Did the President of the United States of America in November of 2017 enjoy Thanksgiving at Jeffrey Epstein's house? I've got no way to confirm that, but this email seems to confirm that. And this email is one of over 20,000 that was recently released by members of the House from the Jeffrey Epstein estate. Epstein was asked who else was down there for the holiday, that's Thanksgiving of 2017, and Epstein replied in the email saying David Feizal, Hansen, and Trump. So, was the sitting president spending Thanksgiving with a sex trafficker 2 years before the sex trafficker mysteriously died in a prison? I don't know, guys. What does the White House have to say about this? It's a hoax. It's all a big Democrat hoax. And I believe it. All right. I'm just kidding. This is one of many. For example, another email recently released from 2019, which was from Epstein to journalist Michael Wolff. Epstein wrote about Trump kicking him out of Mar-a-Lago, saying, Trump said, he asked me to resign, never a member ever. Of course he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop. What exactly does that mean? But it seems like the implication thus far is that Donald Trump was spending Thanksgiving with Epstein in 2017 and he knew about the girls in 2019, which is once again, right before Jeffrey Epstein was murdered or murdered himself or whatever happened. I'm not sure. This is all so unbelievable and simultaneously completely believable. Take another email, for example, from December 15th, 2015. Michael Wolff, this guy, is letting Epstein know that CNN was planning to ask Trump about their relationship during a debate. That is the relationship of Trump and Epstein. Epstein responded by saying, if we were to craft an answer for him, what do you think it should be? Wolff suggested letting Trump hang himself, which is very ironic. Or if it looked like Trump could win, Epstein could save him, generating a debt, which feeds into the entire blackmail saga of the Epstein situation. This is crazy, guys. This is crazy. So what do you think about these emails? The Trump White House thinks that it's all a hoax. They deny any wrongdoing, with Maxwell herself telling investigators she never witnessed the president in any inappropriate setting. That's another recent release from still living Ghislaine Maxwell. If you don't know, she is the right hand to Jeffrey Epstein. This is all so shocking, and more is coming out on a weekly basis, it seems, and it's over, dude. It is so over. Just for clarity, I believe that all of this is true. I think most things are conspiracy. Unfortunately, I have a very unfortunate brain. Genuinely, it's so over. Anyways, that brings us to the central figure of the Epstein saga who is still alive to tell the tale. That is Ghislaine Maxwell. She remains in federal prison serving a 20-year sentence for sex trafficking minors alongside Jeffrey Epstein. She had just as much of a hand in the heinous crimes as Epstein. She's referred to as the monster behind the curtain, and of the 3 people that were arrested in connection with the trafficking ring, she is the sole survivor, the sole living human being. The fashion guy died mysteriously, and the actual real guy, Epstein, died mysteriously as well. Ghislaine's case should have been an open and shut one that we could leave in the rear view, but it's repeatedly exploded into controversy after multiple conflicting things, from Pam Bondi, what are the binders? It's a Democratic hoax. It is so much bullshit that the government is trying to feed the American people that it is mind-boggling. From whatever side of the aisle you're on, guys, how about Team America? How about that? How about Team Let's win again for once and stop allowing these people to do this insane shit? And I'd say the best way to not get tricked is to just read and learn. Anyways, back to Ghislaine Maxwell. After steadfastly refusing to cooperate with investigators for years, Ghislaine suddenly initiated talks with the Trump administration's Deputy Attorney General. In July of 2025, she underwent 9 hours of questioning about over 100 prominent individuals. And following that, she received a transfer to a luxury minimum security prison and is now seeking presidential clemency. So it's odd to myself and probably most people that the same month the DOJ and FBI released their joint memo stating that there is no client list or evidence that preceded further investigations into uncharged third parties in the Epstein case, aka the case is closed. But while they're saying this, they're offering Ghislaine Maxwell limited immunity in questioning, which involves 100 people. What the Believe the opposite of what any of these people say. By the way, if that first email is true, I can't get that out of my head. The Thanksgiving one, the president of the United States at the time in 2017, spending Thanksgiving with Jeffrey Epstein, appointing Acosta to his cabinet, the guy who gave Epstein the sweetheart deal. Oh my God, man. It's very frustrating. How about that Arnuki beast back there? about that on Nuki Beast? That's pretty cool. Take your mind off it for a second. Anyways, anybody who's watched our previous videos knows that the Epstein investigation and the way the public is informed about what has been happening, it all shares a common theme. The story is constantly changing. But why? Why is the story constantly changing? Seems like because it implicates everybody that exists in power. To fully understand the scope of this blackmail rabbit hole, this massive abyssal horror that exists at the very heart of our government in the United States of America, we have to look at Ghislaine Maxwell, okay? Ghislaine Maxwell is the daughter of Robert Maxwell, an alleged Israeli intelligence asset. And this is the start of that abyssal horror. This is the start of the Ghislaine Maxwell rabbit hole, which is very deep and very dark and objectively evil and bad. Ghislaine Noel Marion Maxwell was born on December 25th, Christmas Day in 1961. She was the youngest of 9 children born to Robert Maxwell, a titan in the publishing industry, and Elizabeth Maynard, a French scholar. Her birth came just 3 days before her 15-year-old brother Michael's catastrophic car accident that left him in a coma until he died in 1967. The trauma of Michael's death would shape the family for the worse, and as a result of the loss, her parents were emotionally neglectful. In her mother's memoir, Elizabeth admits, Ghislaine, who should have been the center of our love and attention, was hardly given a glance and became anorexic whilst still a toddler. At 3 years old, Ghislaine had to remind her mother that she existed, at which point they made a more concerted effort and the pendulum swung too far in the other way. Now, the family's material wealth was immense. She grew up in the 50-plus room mansion of Headington Hill Hall in Oxford, and Robert Maxwell was reportedly abusive towards all of his children, and Ghislaine was no exception. But she would become the favorite child. Back to the mother's memoir, in that she stated, "She became spoiled, and the only one of my children that I can actually say that about." This, considering the family lived in a mansion and the father was a media industry leader, a mogul, if you will, it would be extreme to spoil Ghislaine in comparison to the other children who also grew up in an unbelievably extraordinary privilege. While at university, Ghislaine reportedly befriended future Prime Minister and amorphous jelly, Boris Johnson, this guy, the UK version of Trump.
Are you saying they haven't the guts to put questions to me? Great supine protoplasmic invertebrate jellies.
And it is a friendship acknowledged by even Johnson's sister. Her powerful network of friends began to take shape at a very early age, thanks in part to her father's connections as a mogul. Robert Maxwell, her father, born Jan Ludwig Hyman Benjamin Hoch in 1923 in Czechoslovakia, escaped the Holocaust that killed most of his Jewish family. He fought in World War II, becoming a war hero in the British Army after leading an attack on a Nazi machine gun post, which earned him the Military Cross, which is extremely impressive. And after the war, he built his publishing empire, which would span Pergamon Press, Mirror Group newspapers, Macmillan Publishers, and the New York Daily News. He then also became a Labour member of Parliament in the United Kingdom, amassed billions of dollars, and cultivated relationships across the highest levels of British, American, Soviet, and Israeli power structures. So the primary power structures during the last half of the 20th century. The most hotly discussed allegations concern Robert Maxwell's alleged association with Mossad, which is Israel's national intelligence agency. It's their version of the CIA. There's speculation that Robert Maxwell used his position as a member of parliament and his wealth to host extravagant parties at his mansion, Headington Hill Hall, which were just honey traps for gathering sensitive information. A lot of instances of honey trapping are also called sexpionage, where sex, romance, or seduction is used as a tool to extract desired information from a mark, or sometimes to put them in a compromising position that, if photographed or filmed, could be used as blackmail. This happens to congressmen all the time. It does, dude. It's a real thing. Former Israeli military intelligence officer Ari Ben Menash publicly alleged in 1991 that Maxwell had been a longtime Mossad agent. He also wrote a book titled Prophets of War, Inside the Secret U.S.-Israeli Arms Network, which detailed some of Maxwell's alleged involvement in Mossad operations. Now let's speak about Mordecai Vanunu for a moment. If you don't know him, he was an Israeli nuclear technician who was sentenced to 18 years in an Israeli prison for treason when he became a whistleblower who exposed the secrets of Israel's nuclear arsenal. He worked for 8 years at a top-secret nuclear research center, but his conscience wouldn't allow him to sit idly by as his country secretly stockpiled nuclear weapons. It's an act for which he also received a nomination for a Nobel Peace Prize, and something similar to that is the reason why JFK died. Supposedly, his apprehension was aided in part by Robert Maxwell. By the way, that last thing, that's just a conspiracy. That's an alleged conspiracy. That was supposed to be a head-snapping moment. Anyways, investigative journalist Seymour Hersh reported Maxwell's role in the Mordecai Vanunu case in his book, The Samson Option: Israel's Nuclear Arsenal and American Foreign Policy. It's one of my favorite reads. He reported that Maxwell allegedly informed Israeli intelligence that Vanunu was leaking nuclear secrets to the Sunday Times and Sunday Mirror, which is part of the Mirror group of newspapers owned by Maxwell. It's a story that is also echoed in Ari Ben Menashe's book, Prophets of War. When they couldn't find Vanunu, they were tipped off, at which point Vanunu was honey-trapped by an agent named Cindy, who lured him into a pub and enticed him with a trip to her Rome apartment where 3 Mossad agents were waiting. Vanunu was injected with something that rendered him unconscious and was then put into a crate marked as diplomatic cargo so that authorities couldn't inspect it before being taken back to Israel, where he was arrested for his treason. They knocked that motherfucker out, put him in an Amazon box, and shipped him to Israel. The book Robert Maxwell, Israel's Super Spy by Gordon Thomas and Martin Dillon details allegations that Maxwell allegedly distributed bugged Promise intelligence software to governments worldwide for Israeli espionage purposes. By the way, it's very important to understand that Israel is not the only country spying on everybody in the entire world. Every government, every single government in the world is spying on each other, and the CIA literally has a dude that goes on people's podcasts. It's so crazy, the world that we live in. I love it though. I'm in on it, dude. If I end up in a fucking Amazon box getting shipped to Jerusalem, tell my wife that I love her and I'm sorry. So, Robert Maxwell is a big deal for Israel and espionage, and he was also a crucial piece of Israel maintaining air superiority during the Arab-Israel War, where his Czech communist connections helped smuggle aircraft parts to Israel. The nature of his death also raises questions about what sort of clandestine work he may have been privy to. On November 5th, 1991, he was found floating naked in the Atlantic near his yacht, named after his daughter, I guess, Lady Ghislaine. His official cause of death was heart and lung failure, though even the Maxwell family was doubtful of those findings. He received a state funeral in Jerusalem, which was attended by Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir and President Chaim Herzog, and at least 6 at the time serving and former Israeli intelligence chiefs. Herzog gave the eulogy and described Maxwell as a man cast in a heroic mold. His final resting place is one of the most prestigious and sought-after ones in all of Israel, on Jerusalem's Mount of Olives facing the Western Wall. I would say this extraordinary honor for a foreign random businessman strongly suggests some contributions of sort to the government of Israel. I've just got to, it makes sense, right? For example, if I were to pass away and then be buried on the small island of Flores, y'all would definitely suspect my contributions to them Homo floresiensis folks, them little fellers out there. The way that the Israeli officials saw him was very different from the way the British Foreign Office saw him. They described Maxwell as a thoroughly bad character and almost certainly financed by Russia, with known links to British MI6, Soviet KGB, and Israeli Mossad. Whether murder, suicide, or accident, his death left questions about triple agent activities that were permanently unanswered. Ghislaine gave a speech aboard the ship her father's body was found floating beside, thanking everyone who had shown their support to her family, as well as asking the press to respect the privacy of her family during this trying time.
Who have sent messages of support to us at this very, very sad time.
Their privacy, though, would soon be shattered, as following the death of Robert, many things came to light that led Ghislaine to flee to America. For example, a massive fraud case was exposed, as the empire that Robert had built was looking more like a house of cards. One of the companies under the Maxwell family's control was Mirror Group, and it had its pension fund of 440 million British pounds, or 583 million USD, raided by Robert as a way of inflating the company's share price. It made the company look great on paper, but it was stolen from 32,000 employees to prop up the failing empire. Some of the Maxwell children had worked for the company, and in 1992, Ian and Kevin Maxwell, 2 of Robert's sons, were arrested and charged with fraud. However, they were later acquitted. And since Robert had been a member of the Labour Party, the issue became a topic of debate in Parliament as well. A digitized early day motion from December 5th, 1991 recounts the day it was brought up in session. That's a Southern accent. While Mr. Robert Maxwell's labor supporters were daily lecturing ministers of the crown on their moral responsibilities to the sick, the old, and the needy, Robert Maxwell himself was allegedly siphoning off assets by the hundreds of millions from his employees' pension funds to pump into his own very private companies and high living. What a An amendment to the motion also called out those who were attacking Maxwell after his death for not having the guts to join those who had condemned him and his attacks on the miners' union while he was alive. He was kind of a piece of shit. He wasn't liked very much by the Brits. The revelations at the time were devastating. The man who had been touted as a billionaire by Forbes actually had a net worth of -$1 billion, which is the opposite of being a billionaire. This also led to obvious conspiratorial speculation that he was seeking money from Israel, potentially even threatening them, at which point he was killed. There's a lot of theories on this. It's possible that he was seen as a potential loose end that needed to be dealt with. After all, further digitized early day motions from just 2 weeks before Maxwell's death discussed concerns with Maxwell's close relationship with Israeli intelligence, Mossad, and Maxwell's role in helping circumvent a United Nations arms embargo to negotiate a sale of 4,000 TOW anti-tank missiles to Iran, as well as his connection to Vannunu's apprehension by Mossad. So things were happening behind the scenes, it seems like. But maybe it was a coincidence, maybe it was a perfect storm of circumstances that led to him being seen as a threat. And maybe the show of Israel's top government officials at his funeral touting him as a hero, a man in hero form, was a way of trying to dispel anyone who may think that they were involved, as well as to potentially apologize for doing what they did by making him a martyr. Maybe they didn't, I don't know. So don't ship me in an Amazon box to, all right, that Wailing Wall and shit. I'm not touching that wall. One such person who believed him killed was his daughter, Ghislaine, who soon fled to America buying a one-way Concorde ticket to New York, where another wealthy, powerful, and connected man awaited her. Maxwell met Epstein in the early 1990s, with Maxwell herself stating she befriended him in 1991 and began a sexual relationship in 1992. That being said, the question of whether Maxwell can be taken at her word is a matter of hot debate because she's full of shit. She's been described as someone with willingness to brazenly lie under oath. That is a real-life quote, but her lawyers say she's spoken truthfully. We'll bring that up again later because it's really important because she's having to talk under oath a lot right about now, guys. But the reason it's also mentioned here is that some accounts claim her father introduced them before his death, likely during a period when she was in New York to pave the way for her father's businesses. So daddy introduced baby to Jeffy. That being said, there are other reports that state that they met through mutual social circles in New York following her move to America. What we do know for sure is that her name appears in Epstein's flight logs as far back as April 1991, well before her father's death. So whatever the nature of their first meeting, by 1993, the two were publicly associated. An ad placed in the February 1993 issue of Yoga Journal listed a full-time job opening for a yoga instructor in New York, offering benefits and the opportunity for extensive travel. The number belonged to Epstein, and it instructed people to contact Miss Maxwell. So the relationship evolved from something romantic to a sophisticated sex trafficking conspiracy that would span at least a decade. From 1994 to 2004, Ghislaine served as the architect, recruiter, and participated directly in Epstein's abuse of hundreds of minors. Court documents detail her specific and horrifying methods with precision. She identified vulnerable teenage girls, typically from the age of 14 to 17, from the single mother households facing financial hardship. Also, using her status as a sophisticated, well-connected woman, she created pretenses of legitimate opportunities. She'd offer mentorship, education, travel experiences. She would lavish the victims with gifts, all in order to earn their trust. She'd ask them about their lives, about school, about their families, building friendships with them, all to exploit later. Victims would be taken to the movies, on shopping trips where extravagant gifts would be purchased, all to make it so that when Ghislaine and Jeffrey finally would ask for something in return for their generosity, the pressure to go along with it would be even more extreme, stemming from a sense of being indebted to Maxwell or Epstein. She'd either undress in front of victims or be present when they were undressing, normalizing an adult's presence presence during nudity as well as adult nudity. Her presence during victims' interactions with Epstein was a method of normalizing the encounters, since by this time, she'd ensured that the victim thought of her as trustworthy. It put them at ease when they were uncomfortable, since she was the adult woman who had looked out for them. So at the peak of Ghislaine and Epstein's association and evil, the two were consorting with royals, billionaires, and even presidents. She was staying at the Queen's Balmoral estate with Epstein, attending royal events and partying at Mar-a-Lago, but we're not supposed to believe that any of the people who witnessed this knew about what was going on behind the scenes. None of them knew, guys. It's just Ghislaine now. Everybody else is dead, all right, or had their eyes closed or wide shut, or whatever. Thank you to ZocDoc for sponsoring this video. Guys, it's 2025 and there's no more excuses to wait until something falls off your body to go to the doctor or whatever. I'm not that talented of a guitar player. Either way, the point is, it's time to take your health seriously, and ZocDoc makes that very easy. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors and instantly book appointments, some even same day. They have over 100,000 doctors across every specialty, from mental health to dental health, primary care, urgent care, and more. You can filter for doctors who take your insurance, who are close to you, who speak your language. Once you find the right doctor using ZocDoc, you can see their real appointment times and book instantly. No calling, no annoying. And appointments from ZocDoc usually happen between 24 and 72 hours, sometimes as early as same day. I use ZocDoc myself, and you should as well. It makes taking care of yourself as easy as ordering takeout. Stop putting off doctor's appointments. Go to zocdoc.com/Oompaville to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's zocdoc.com/Oompaville. Use ZocDoc for the wart on your... In the later stage of the period of rampant and vile abuse, between 2001 and 2004, the operation evolved into a pyramid recruitment scheme where Maxwell would pay victims hundreds of dollars in cash to recruit additional girls to be victimized. There were so many victims, and the abuse occurred across multiple properties: Epstein's 28,000 square foot Manhattan townhouse, his 14,000 square foot Palm Beach estate, his 10,000 acre Zorro Ranch in New Mexico, which is a missile silo that he bought from the New Mexican government, and Little St. James Island in the U.S. Virgin Islands, now known as Epstein Island, and even Ghislaine Maxwell's own London townhouse in Belgravia, where the infamous picture of Virginia Giuffre and Prince Andrew was taken. Across these properties, over 1,000 victims were abused as a result of the vast sex trafficking system that Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell had meticulously created over the span of a decade, some of whom testified against Ghislaine in court. Many of the victims have testified anonymously, and one of these Jane Does stated that without Ghislaine, none of this would have even been possible. The quote is, "Without Ghislaine, Jeffrey could not have done what he did. She was in charge." This Jane Doe had known Ghislaine Maxwell for 10 years, and she fully knew about the abuse and that she egged him on. She egged Jeffrey on. After Epstein's July 6, 2019 arrest on federal sex trafficking charges and his August 10th, 2019 death by murder in a Manhattan jail cell, Maxwell vanished entirely. Her lawyers claimed that they did not know her whereabouts. And in December 2019, she purchased a remote 156-acre property in Bradford, New Hampshire for approximately $1 million through Granite Realty, posing as a journalist with the name Jen Marshall. She used aliases to register her phone and also to order packages. A former security guard who worked the property claimed that her brother had hired former British military service members to protect her at the New Hampshire hideout. And the FBI even spoke with the former guard, and the security detail was from a security company staffed by former British military personnel, and they had rotations at the New Hampshire property. So that checked out. Now, considering that many British royals serve military functions, like Prince Andrew, friend of Epstein and Maxwell, who was a helicopter pilot in the Falklands War, and an honorary vice admiral of the Royal Navy and colonel of the Grenadier Guard, conspiracy theorists can pull that thread with one hand and jerk themselves with the other all night long. The FBI eventually caught on and tracked her using GPS data from a cell phone registered to GMAX, which is not a great alias, not the most secretive alias. She used this phone to call her husband, Scott Borgerson, whom she'd married in secret in 2016, as well as her sister Isabel and her lawyers. And on July 2nd, 2020, at approximately 8:30 a.m., FBI agents broke through the locked security gate, announced themselves, and arrested Ghislaine Maxwell. They arrested her in her pajamas, which is pretty funny. Her lawyers were, of course, quick to establish their own narrative surrounding the nature of her time at the secluded New Hampshire estate. She wasn't hiding from law enforcement or federal investigators. Of course, she was maintaining a level of privacy from the media and public while she litigated civil cases. You know, from victims that she abused. When they showed up, they witnessed her fleeing to different rooms in the house, and the lawyers said there was no need to break down the door because it was unlocked and she'd fled not to escape the officers on scene, but because she was only wearing pajamas. But if any of that were true, it wouldn't explain why her phone was found wrapped in tinfoil, which is a completely ineffective anti-surveillance attempt. You have to use a Faraday bag. All right, guys, a Faraday cage. That's what prevents microwaves from shooting giant gamma particles into your nog. These were her initial charges, along with 2 counts of perjury. It's crazy to me that 3 of the 4 charges related to criminal sexual activity with a minor only carry a maximum sentence of 5 years, especially considering FBI Assistant Director William F. Sweeney said, "Preserving the innocence of children is among the most important responsibilities we carry as adults." Huh? If that's the case, you're gonna have to get rid of a lot of people. Seems like. And I've got to say, 5 years ain't tough enough on these freaks. Following the charges, Maxwell was held at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, one of the Bureau of Prisons' most troubled facilities. U.S. District Judge Allison Nathan was assigned to the case, and Maxwell was denied bail 5 times due to her immense wealth, a U.S., British, and French passport, a massive risk to flee she was, along with her extensive international connections and her sophisticated efforts that she took to hide from the government and federal agents. Over the course of her bail denials, her lawyers gradually increased the amount of bail she'd be willing to pay, with her and her supporters being willing to pay $28.5 million. She was also willing to be placed under 24-hour armed guard, wear an electronic bracelet, and would renounce her citizenships in England and France, leaving her nowhere to go legally. That being said, I still think it's smart that she was never granted bail, even with the further negotiations from her lawyers, simply because if we look back at Epstein's imprisonment, when he was allowed to leave prison for 12 hours a day for his work release, thanks to Alex Acosta, by the way, who Trump appointed. Just letting you know, guys, if you didn't, also, they were hanging out on Thanksgiving in 2017 when Trump was the president of the United States of America. Just so you guys know, by the way, he predicated his whole first campaign on draining the swamp, and just so you guys know. Anyways, Judge Nathan knew that Maxwell posed a substantial risk of flight and was denied bail at every single request. If she got out, there would be no going back in. She had the connections and resources to live off the grid indefinitely, which is surprising to me that she didn't take even more of an effort, because she had to know the hammer was coming down. Over the course of her 22 months of pretrial detention, she filed over 100 formal complaints regarding the conditions she faced. Considering her crimes, it's very dark and ironic. It's also ironic that it took until after Trump's administration to get her locked up, because to be honest, the whole aluminum foil on the phone thing doesn't really scream of much intelligence to me. She spent the time in solitary confinement. She claimed prison guards subjected her to increasingly frequent and painful and humiliating body cavity searches. She also claimed that wardens filmed her in the showers as they recorded her daily routine. There's a lot of irony in these claims, and obviously it's not okay for prison guards and people like that to, abuse inmates. But I will say it is very hard to feel empathy for a sick an actual monster. So take that how you will. Headlines like Ghislaine Maxwell is not having a good time in prison are good headlines, but they don't really cause me to be like, oh God, she's not having a good time. I go, oh, that's probably good. That's probably good, right? I don't think you're supposed to have a good time in prison when you're locked up for committing crimes and abusing over 1,000 children. I don't think you're supposed to have a good time, to be honest. Guards were apparently waking her every 15 minutes with a flashlight to confirm that she was breathing, which is a precaution deemed necessary considering the only other 2 people ever charged in connection with this specific sex trafficking ring, Jeffrey Epstein and Jean-Luc Brunel, both died mysteriously in their prison cells. Not many people die in prison cells. It's not that common, especially high profile. Usually they're murdered, but they don't die alone in their prison cells. Her team of lawyers has alleged that rat feces and raw sewage fall from air vents or leak into her cell, but the government always has maintained that her conditions are what's expected at a jail facility. I got fucking rat feces leaking from my vents in my beautiful office where I film YouTube videos, so suck it up, you dumb bitch. Womp womp. Womp womp. Don't care. There was also allegations from Maxwell's side saying that she wasn't allowed the proper time to prepare her defense, and prosecutors countered by saying that she receives just as much time, if not more time, than other inmates to prepare by reviewing discovery and communicating with her attorneys. They said the BOP is providing the defendant with conditions that allow her access to discovery materials so that she can meaningfully participate in the preparation of her defense. So she's trying to garner public sympathy by telling horror stories about her time in prison, and it seems like nobody is listening. Well, at least until July of this year, when they sent her to Hotel 6 or whatever. Judge Allison Nathan was also not having any of the complaints that Maxwell's lawyers were trying to use as justification for reduced sentencing or to make bail seem justifiable. Nathan shot down their demands and also saw nothing wrong with the round-the-clock surveillance of Maxwell by saying, "The defendant has provided the court with no evidence and no reason to believe that the surveillance measures are motivated by improper purposes." Now, to be clear, because context does matter, MDC Brooklyn is kind of a shithole. It is known for its terrible conditions. It has been called hell on earth by defense attorneys and one of the most troubled, if not the most troubled facility in the Bureau of Prisons. It was called this by former warden Cameron Lindsay. It's also where Diddy is held. In January and February of 2019, 1,600 inmates were held without heat or power for a week during a polar vortex, whatever the that is, resulting in a $10 million class action settlement from prisoners. And by 2024, federal judges were refusing to send defendants to the facility and granting sentence reductions based on its unsafe, dangerous, and chaotic conditions. Fix it! Ghislaine's trial lasted for 1 month, from November to December in 2021. During the trial, 24 prosecution witnesses made appearances over 10 days and only a few defense witnesses over 2 days. The angle that the defense took was that Ghislaine was a scapegoat for Epstein's crimes, and since Epstein had died in prison before he could face justice in the courts, they argued that Maxwell was a victim. She was a victim of vindictive prosecution that needed someone to blame since the main villain, who was Jeffrey, was murdered by the Trump administration in 2019. Allegedly! One of her lawyers, Bobby Sternheim, even told jurors that recollections from witnesses who testified were not to be trusted, alleging that the accusers were unreliable and had poor memories, or suspect memories. For example, the women could have been corrupted or contaminated by media reports. Yes, lawyer, we are going to not trust the victims and instead trust the woman who knowingly lied under oath in a deposition during a 2015 defamation lawsuit filed by Virginia Giuffre, where she denied awareness of anyone at Epstein's properties being under the age of 18. She also stated she was unaware of Epstein with anyone other than herself and 2 other women, and denied knowledge of a scheme to recruit underage girls for massages, which we have proof of all of this. And if these victims were corrupted or contaminated by anyone, I'm pretty sure it wasn't the media. It was the client that the defense represented and her dead ex-boyfriend who was murdered allegedly by the Trump administration. I don't know if I should be saying that. I feel like I can though, right? It seems like it. I'm pretty good at math. All right. I'm pretty good at math. I'm pretty good at math. And in that math, like 1 + 1 type shit, there's not even a letter in that math. It's just like 1 + 1. What does that equal? PEMDAS, you don't even have to do PEMDAS. It's just 2. After 5 full days of deliberation, the jury found the British socialite, the favorite daughter of the media empire fraudster and serial abuser, guilty of 5 of the 6 counts. During sentencing, the judge only sentenced her based on 3 of the counts, deeming the other 2 repetitive. She was given a 20-year sentence followed by 5 years of supervised release and a $750,000 fine. I feel like that's not even that bad. I mean, come on. She was not being punished in place of Epstein. She was being punished for the crimes that she had committed herself and just refused to take accountability for and lied about. In a pretrial motion, this had been outlined by prosecutors who stated the defendant's willingness to brazenly lie under oath about her conduct, including some of the conduct charged in the indictment, strongly suggests her true motive has been and remains to avoid being held accountable for her crimes. When the defendant was given the opportunity to address her conduct with minors in the context of a civil suit, she lied repeatedly. Furthering this point, Judge Allison Nathan had words following the conclusion of the trial. Ms. Maxwell today acknowledged the courage of the victims and talked about the pain and anguish they expressed, and to some extent acknowledged the pain and suffering. What wasn't expressed was the acceptance of responsibility. This information is very important, and it takes on a totally new significance in her later quest for cooperation deals and her pursuit of clemency. At the time, however, the people were celebrating the win. Ghislaine Maxwell is being held somewhat accountable for her crimes. Ghislaine was sent to the Federal Correctional Institution in Tallahassee, Florida to serve her sentence. It is a low-security facility where she could take yoga, painting, and even cosmetology classes. She reportedly even began learning Russian to stay sane. And never once did she seem to consider working with the feds. Until recently, for a whole administration, she didn't work with the feds until a new one came in. Weird, man. What the f***'s up with that shit? I'm just crazy, by the way. I'm not actually implying anything or whatever. For nearly 5 years, Maxwell steadfastly refused to work with or even cooperate with prosecutors. She maintained her innocence throughout the duration of her trial. She showed no acceptance, nor took responsibility for her actions, and was clearly someone who couldn't be trusted to be honest, given her history of being a lying, insane bitch. She had a 1-year window from June 2022 to June 2023, where under the federal rule of criminal procedure 35B, she could have cooperated for a potential sentence reduction, but she did not. Then, in July of 2025, everything changed. For some context, on July 14th, the DOJ sought to dismiss Maxwell's Supreme Court appeal from April 10th, 2025, in which she claimed she was protected from prosecution due to Epstein's 2007 plea agreement. Essentially, in the sweetheart deal Epstein made, thanks to Donald Trump's buddy, Acosta, Maxwell argued that the government had made a written promise that the United States would not prosecute Epstein's co-conspirators. However, here she was being prosecuted as a co-conspirator. Oh my God! That's the appeal that Maxwell had filed in April, and which Solicitor General Sauer from the Department of Justice filed a brief in opposition to the appeal on July 14th. Interestingly, though, it was the next day that the Wall Street Journal first contacted Trump regarding an alleged 2003 birthday letter he'd written to Epstein. So these three events, the Ghislaine's Supreme Court appeal, Trump's DOJ opposition to the appeal, and the alleged birthday letter to Epstein, don't seem linked in any way. It's more coincidental that these things would happen, but something was about to happen that one could argue does link them all together. On July 17th, 2 days after the Wall Street Journal reached out to Trump, they published articles covering the contents of the 50th birthday book Epstein received, prepared by Ghislaine Maxwell. Reporting from Reuters on the 19th of July shows Trump suing the Wall Street Journal over the article, seeking $10 billion. The entire situation is a PR nightmare for the Trump administration, and it's just been getting worse. Not only did a letter that really looked like Trump was aware of what Epstein was up to appear in the birthday book, but also a supposed check for the sale of a fully depreciated woman was found within its pages. Then, after it's reported on, Trump sues the paper for an amount of money that no one could even visualize in their minds, which to many seemed to oppose the values in the Constitution completely and stifles the freedom of press established in the First Amendment that our founding fathers intended to be applicable to all of us, even those who don't agree with you. The timeline becomes even more curious and suspicious when just days after that, on July 22nd, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, who had previously been Trump's personal criminal defense lawyer, announced that he would be meeting with Ghislaine Maxwell. If Ghislaine Maxwell has information about anyone who has committed crimes against victims, the FBI and the DOJ will hear what she has to say. So this obviously only served to increase scrutiny and suspicion surrounding the way the administration was handling the Epstein investigation up until this point. Nothing about it makes any sense unless you're writing a script for a movie. And the goal for that movie is to make it not make any sense. In the same statement he shares, he still stands by the joint statement from the DOJ and FBI memo that was released on the 6th of July, which was the memo in which they claimed there was no reason to investigate anyone else. There was no other bad guys in the whole thing. So in that case, wouldn't having the conversation with Ghislaine Maxwell be one of the absolute first things you would do? At the very least, you should do that before releasing a memo stating that there's no reason to investigate any third parties and the case is essentially closed. What could have changed in such a short period of time? Could it be that the Wall Street Journal exposed something incredibly damning that made the Trump administration scramble to find a way to make the new allegations go away? I don't know, but 1 + 1 + 1 is 3. Ghislaine Maxwell could potentially offer salvation. She's not against lying under oath. The two met on July 24th, and from this meeting, there were 267 pages of transcripts available to read from their hours of interviews on the 24th, and 66 more pages from the continued interviews on the 25th. On the 24th, Ghislaine confirmed on page 7 that this is the first time anyone from the government has spoken to her. She said, "I would be very keen to talk to anyone because no one from the government at any time ever since the inception of the case, so dating back to the early 2000s, has ever spoken to me, and indeed, I believe ever reached out to me at any time to even speak to me. And that includes up to when I was indicted and prosecuted." For this conversation, Maxwell was granted limited proffer, which is immunity, meaning her statements couldn't be used against her unless she lied, which is fantastic. I'm sure we can trust a woman who's been charged with perjury before and who lies under oath, and that's like her whole thing. The agreement included no promises of sentence reduction, clemency, or a cooperation deal, and Blanche stated explicitly, this isn't a cooperation agreement, meaning that by you meeting with us today, we're really just meeting. I'm not promising to do anything. They just want to hear what she has to say. Everything about it is highly unusual. A former senior Justice Department official spoke to NBC under the condition of maintaining anonymity, saying, "I've never heard of a deputy attorney general doing anything like this before." Let me guess, this guy talking to NBC? A Democrat. After all this, things get even more sketchy. Maureen Comey, daughter of the former FBI director James Comey, who worked as a prosecutor in the Epstein case and would have the most knowledge of the case, was fired on July 16th. So to place that firing in the timeline, that is the day after the Wall Street Journal reached out regarding Trump's letter in the 50th birthday book. It's also roughly a week before the conversation between Blanche and Maxwell. So the person who potentially could have had the most insights in the conversation and steered it in the best direction was ousted before the interviews. Great. In fact, as a result of the firing, Maureen is now suing the Justice Department over her firing, stating that it was illegal and politically motivated and that there was no legitimate explanation, and it came the day after she was asked to take the lead on a major public corruption case. Oh my God. So rather than having a literal Epstein prosecutor ask the questions, we got Trump's former personal defense attorney in the driver's seat. I'm sure there's absolutely no bias there whatsoever. But to be fair, who the knows with the Epstein prosecution? I mean, it all seemed, every aspect of it seemed to be pretty bad. Former Manhattan ADA Catherine Christian speculated that the interviews could just be an effort to protect Trump rather than a legitimate pursuit of justice, saying, "It's hard to believe this is anything but performative." Or Todd Blanche just wanting to have her on the record saying, yes, President Trump had nothing to do with any of this. He is his lawyer, after all. Whether or not that is the case, that is exactly what happened. About Trump specifically, Maxwell said, "I have never witnessed the president in any inappropriate setting in any way. The president was never inappropriate with anybody." Remember, there's no official deal on the table here for Maxwell to receive a pardon or a reduced sentence or anything really for this interview aside from her immunity, so long as she's truthful. Now, another one to our incredibly complex equation, we shall add now. It is awfully convenient that 4 days after the interview where the woman who's known for lying on the record exonerates the president of the United States, Donald Trump, Trump starts talking about how he's allowed to give her a pardon.
Well, I'm allowed to give her a pardon, but nobody's approached me with it. Nobody's asked me about it. It's in the news about that aspect of it, but right now it would be inappropriate to talk about it.
And upon reviewing the transcripts ourselves, I was extremely curious about the birthday book. It was the big thing that had just been made public before the interview, and it was full of shit that showed that people knew about Epstein's disgusting crimes, and it was just a bunch of bullshit that anybody doesn't know. I mean, everything's legit. It's a Democrat hoax. It's a Democrat hoax. That's my new favorite thing ever, by the way. Looking through the transcripts, the only questions that we could see being asked about the book were about Trump, not any of the other dozens of individuals who had contributed content to it. This starts on page 177 of 263, and the idea was inspired by a book that Ghislaine's mother had put together for her father's 60th birthday. And Epstein had liked the idea and asked Ghislaine to help coordinate it. And the two of them both reached out to people to contribute, but conveniently, because it was so long ago, when Blanche asked if she remembered specific names of individuals who did send letters, she says it's been too long and doesn't remember, which could be honest, but probably not. So Todd Blanche, the former defense attorney for President Donald Trump, only asks about one name in the book. Todd Blanche said, "The article talks about several names. The article, which is on Donald Trump. Do you remember President Trump submitting a letter or a card or a note?" Ghislaine Maxwell said, I don't. So despite there being dozens of contributors to the book, famous people, Trump is the only one that Trump's attorney asks about, which I guess does make sense. But it really just feels like an effort to make him look innocent. You know, why not ask who drew the picture of Epstein getting massaged by a naked girl? Or about the letter from Degenerate 2 to Degenerate 1, in which it says, so many girls, so little time. No wonder Trump mentioned the idea of pardoning her. She is literally his get out of jail free card. Well, I don't think so. He views it that way, maybe, but it just looks bad to anybody with a functioning brain. I do see people defending it, though, online. It's really sad, man. It's really sad. You do know, like, it's cool to like a political candidate, but they're people. They're people, and they will make mistakes. And you don't have to defend them. You don't have to defend those people. They're not good people. They don't care about you. They're not going to do anything for you. They're going to continue to ruin the country, and they will continue to push us further and further from the original idea that America was, which that happens on both sides. There is not a good side. There is only America. We have to stand for what the country was founded on, and that is the belief that everyone can succeed and everyone should be treated with respect, allowed to say whatever they want, defend themselves with firearms that should be legal, and buy homes and afford food. Everybody. You know, not just like a group of people or whatever. It's bleak, man. Times are bleak right now. It's up. On August 1st, 2025, just days after the July interviews, Ghislaine Maxwell was transferred from the low security facility she was imprisoned at in Tallahassee, Florida, to a federal prison camp in Bryan, Texas. FPC Bryan. It's a minimum security luxury facility with dormitory style housing and much more freedom than she had in Tallahassee, where she had yoga classes and cosmetology bullshit. I don't know, dude. The transfer, like everything else in this case, is highly unusual. Nothing makes sense. There is objectively no justice that is being served here. We keep getting more and more emails, and there are like 2 Republicans right now. This is what's so insane to me. There's like 2 in the House that want all the files to be released. Thomas Massie and Tim Blanchett, or whatever the fuck his name is. The old guy who walks around sad and he's like, I just saw JFK. There was another shooter on the hill. We killed that sumbitch. Man, it's insane, dude. It's f***ing insane. I cannot believe it. Sex offenders like Ghislaine Maxwell typically aren't placed in minimum security environments, and due to her convictions for recruiting and grooming minors for abuse, you'd think that she'd be considered a sex offender, and that's the sort of public safety factor, which requires at least a low security facility placement. But no, she's magic and special, and she's not treated like the other sex offenders in America because she's got dirt on the president, it seems like. But it doesn't stop there, of course. Whistleblower reports claim she receives concierge-style treatment at FPC Bryan. Custom meals are delivered to her cell. She has a special visitor area with snacks and refreshments and access to staff facility. That's a whistleblower, so who knows about whistleblowers? And then there's also a puppy. In August of 2025, it was reported that Maxwell was barred from participating in the service dog training programs at FPC Bryan. Paige Mazzoni, CEO of Canine Companion, said, "We do not allow anyone whose crime involves abuse towards minors or animals, including any crime of a sexual nature. Those are crimes against the vulnerable, and you're putting them with a puppy who is a vulnerable little creature." So in spite of that being said, from the CEO of Canine Companions, the people giving Maxwell preferential treatment don't give a shit what that person wants and believes and stands for. And an inmate who trains puppies to become service dogs was instructed to give one to Maxwell, which is something that just should not have happened. Why does she have a dog? And this is all while she's preparing a clemency application and a plea for mercy, supposedly even doing so with the warden's direct help. People are mad about that, and it can't keep happening, guys. Can't. What are we supposed to do? I don't know. What is there to do? I guess just keep talking about it? I don't know. The whole story is wild. And also Prince Andrew, we just talked about him, or maybe this video is coming out first. We're gonna talk a lot more about Prince Andrew, but some more information came out after that video was recorded. Prince Andrew is no longer Prince Andrew. He is Andrew Windsor Batten, and he's been formally requested by the Democratic members of the House Oversight Committee to submit to a transcribed interview, but it's not a subpoena and isn't legally required, so he will definitely decline. He's not going to say anything because he's a idiot. But of those 20,000 emails that came out recently, it indicate that Andrew and Epstein communicated even after they supposedly cut off contact, being honorable after Prince Andrew honorably I don't know, dude. Not to mention the emails show that Trump allegedly knew about the girls and spent hours with a victim, and so much more. Sorry I look different, but things keep happening, things keep releasing. For example, now the House has voted to release the Epstein files. It's going to move on to the Senate, and who knows what will happen next week. This video was recorded a few days ago, and since the over 20,000 emails were released, a bunch of stuff has been found in them. Take, for example, perhaps most bizarrely, the emails between Mark and Jeffrey Epstein discussing in 2018 asking Steve Bannon if Putin still had the pictures of Trump blowing Bubba. Bubba is Bill Clinton's well-known nickname. I have no idea what's going on. I assume more is going to be coming out soon. So there's more that we don't know than what we do know. And one thing is for sure, there's 20,000 emails that were released and Trump's name is mentioned 1,500 times in those 20,000, more than anybody else's name. Trump's the dog who didn't bark. He knew about the girls. He'd been blowing Bubba. And we know about the Trump administration fighting the release of the files, even holding situation room meetings to block their disclosure, with the DOJ formally closing the investigation in July of this year, with there being no uncharged third parties, which we all know is total bullshit. But after all these emails were released, now Trump over the last 2 or 3 days has reversed course and wants the files to be released. Today, the House voted 427-1 to release the files. Then Trump directed Pam Bondi to reopen the Epstein investigation again. What? And explicitly stating that they're going to investigate Democrats, not Republicans. They're going to investigate Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, Reid Hoffman, not Donald Trump, the man who's been mentioned 1,500 times in the 20,000 emails. Whoa, I cannot believe that this is real or that this is happening, and it's unbelievable. It's inexplicable and it makes no sense, and there will be more. Anyways, guys, comment down below. Let me know what you think about this whole thing. It's bleak. It's very, very bleak. I think, I mean, just seeing people's responses to it on Twitter is pretty insane as well. People who I think are pretty smart, just, you know, ball riding for no reason. It's like, what are you doing, dude? What the fuck is wrong with you? If you have any morals at all, if any decision making that you make or things that you rally for or rally against are based in any sort of moral standing, it is not possible to support the current incumbent government of the United States of America. It is not possible. It hasn't been possible for a very long time, to be fair. But right now, it is not possible, even remotely. It is not even remotely possible. You cannot. You cannot. Anyways, thank you guys for watching this video. If you enjoyed, press the like button. If you want to see more, go to the Gump Club, see some behind the scenes footage. I've got a second channel where we're doing a documentary about making a game. I also have a candy company called Sour Boys. Go to sour.gg, buy some sour candy. We just released these new sour powder things. You can put them on like watermelon, or it's unbelievably delicious. And I also released a mobile game called Legend of Zolk, which is a little endless runner game. It's got the characters from Sour Boys in it. It's pretty fun. It's on iPhone. It should be on Android very soon. Really appreciate you all, and I'll see you in the next video.